Okay, there we go. So Washington, one more time. Anybody from Washington on the line with us today? How about Northwest? Clackamas.
This is Chelsea Hamilton. I'm on the line.
Welcome, Chelsea. Thank you. How about Multnomah?
Hi, this is Lailani Abayas.
Welcome. Marion Polk. Yamhill. Lynn Benton Lincoln.
This is Christy and Jenny.
Welcome. Lane.
Michelle and Claire.
Welcome. South Central.
Hi, it's Jillian.
Welcome. South Coast.
This is Sarah.
Welcome. Southern.
We have Teresa, Molly, and Karen online.
Welcome. Central. Eastern Oregon.
Julie Rogers.
Welcome. Frontier. Four Rivers. Blue Mountain.
Amy and Aaron are here.
Welcome. All right, I'm going to do one more run through. Washington. Northwest. Marion Polk. Yamhill. Central. Frontier. Four Rivers. Okay, and then our presenters. Holly, will you introduce yourself, please?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Holly Wingard, and I am joining you from Michigan today. I work with the Early Childhood Investment Corporation with the Training and Technical Assistance Center there, and I have been working in early child systems and community engagement and family engagement for the past 12 years with our Great Start system, and I'm excited to share some things with you today. So thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Holly, and we'll get right back to you and make you the presenter. Julie Smith, will you also introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. It's Julie Smith with Community Design Partners. I do community-based improvement efforts, and I'm going to be taking you through a facilitator's guide later.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Julie. And then anybody else that is on the line that wants to introduce themselves? Okay. Well, then in the room, this is Denise Swanson. You all know me. I'm one of two Early Learning Hub managers, so glad to be here and to be your co-facilitator today with my colleague, Cass. And so I'll let her introduce herself as well.
Good morning, everyone. This is Cassandra Furter, and thank you so much for taking this time on a Friday to have this important webinar. We're really excited about it. Thanks.
Cass. And also in the room?
Aaron Reyna. I'm the new Administrative Support Specialist.
Very good. Welcome, Aaron. And we know Brett Walker is also in and out, so he'll be joining us shortly as well. So with that, we have a very busy agenda today, so I'm going to take the moment to make Holly the presenter. So give me 1 second here. There we go. And there we go, Holly. Let me know if you have any trouble there. Nope, looks like you've got it. And Holly is going to start us off. So Holly, go ahead and take it away. If anyone is having trouble viewing any of the slides, etc., or any other issues, please just send me a message in the chat box, and we can see what we can do to get you taken care of. And with that, we'll go ahead with Holly. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. So I am excited to talk with all of you about some tips and some lessons learned that I have for you, and just want to start by saying congratulations to all of you in the investment that has happened in Oregon with the Student Success Act. I know that was no small feat, and what a wonderful opportunity for your families and children in Oregon. So really excited to be supporting you as you think through how to really engage families in this, because of course all of us know for sure that we want the policies and the programs and things that we are investing in all of our states and nationwide, we want them to be what parents and families want and need. And so really getting parents to the table is such a critical and important part, and really such a pleasure to work with families. And so I'm excited to share with you some things that Michigan has learned over the past more than a decade of really focusing on family engagement in our system building efforts. So while we're together during this about 45 minutes that I'll be talking about, I'm going to share with you, and have a conversation a little bit with you about why parent involvement is so important to the work, and then talk about how to engage those specific parents that we want, kind of what the criteria is that you should be thinking about as you do your targeted recruiting for those parents who fit the bill for the work that you're doing in your communities. And then thinking more specifically, I'm going to shift then into really talking about how to get started in the right way to prepare them for their successful participation, and then provide you with some very concrete tips that I have for providing support before, during, and after meetings continually for those parent members that you engage. So I want to just kick off our conversation about engaging parents by asking all of you, from your perspective, why is parent voice important to the work that you're doing? And feel free to just type stuff in the chat. So if you're in a group together, just come up with some ideas and throw it in the chat room. If you're so motivated, you can also unmute yourself and say something. But why is parent voice important to the work that you're doing? Give you a second. Just in case people are new to this technology too, if you just click on chat and you can just, on your right navigation bar, you just click on the chat and open that, and then you type in there and send it to all, so everybody can see what you're talking about.
Okay, everybody, don't be shy. Let's get in there.
Okay, excellent. So critical when planning programming for our community that we meet the current needs of parents and families. Absolutely. We need to hear directly from families to understand the type of programs and supports they need and what would realistically work in their lives. Excellent. They're consumers of the system and their voice is important. Absolutely. There's no way to truly know all that is necessary to meet the family's needs. Right. Nothing about us without us, right? Because they're the center of our work and we need to share power with them. Ooh, I love that. Any other thoughts? Excellent. Thank you. That is a great start. So when we think about parent voice, I think we've already kind of talked about a lot of these things, but what we know for sure is that, the parents are the ones that are really the first teachers and key decision makers for their children. And as consumers, they are going to need to drive what it is, and they actually do drive whether or not programs succeed or fail. And so in our work, it's really important, as you guys were all saying, that we need to be engaging them and their voices. So we know that because they bring this unique and important perspective to the table, We also need to think about some examples of how very specifically they support system change. And based on results of several comprehensive evaluations of systems building work in Michigan, it became very clear to us that the communities that were working with families and had them as partners in the work, not just as kind of a token family sitting there, but really partners connecting and becoming change agents, really digging into the work. Those communities were able to accomplish more system level changes in their community. Let me give you a couple examples of how parent voice can support system change. So I think somebody had said that they really can help us ensure the problems that we're looking at are clearly defined by the people who are experiencing them. Sometimes we hear bits and pieces about what the problems are, and then historically have gone ahead and tried to solve problems without actually really defining the full problem. And so really getting the parent voice from that perspective and getting the full picture is really helpful to us as we're creating our plans. In addition, parents help support the identification of the root causes of the problem. So really getting at the why. And they also help to create strategies that address disparities. So we all know that there are access issues, and parents can help us understand if we create a strategy to fix something, who's going to benefit, and maybe more importantly, who's not going to benefit from the things that we're trying to do. They also, of course, bring a different perspective and awareness to how policies that we create could have unintended consequences for the people that we're trying to help. So being planful and targeted in your recruitment is going to take a lot of effort, but I can guarantee to you it will pay off in the long run. Just like any hiring and engagement processes that you have been through, finding the right fit for both you and for the parent members lead to really great and strong partnerships. So I have some suggestions to think about as you start your approach to finding the parents that would be right for your stewardship committees. So first of all, of course, as all of you know, you have been provided with some really good guidance on an overarching criteria for the parents that you need to engage. So you're looking clearly for families who have at least one child under the age of 12, that they've utilized out-of-home child care. Perhaps they've had some parent leadership experience already, maybe with Head Start Policy Council or something, and that they're currently or have recently used some of the programs and services that you're looking to target, like Early Head Start or Oregon Pre-K, et cetera. And in your areas, which I know some of them are multi-county and rather large, really thinking about having parent representation from more than one area so that you're really looking at those geographic differences. And those are really great starting points for you to think about as you start targeting who is it that we're looking for to sit on our committee. So next, I would suggest that you look at your data and really think about the diversity that you need in order to ensure that the parent representation mirrors the cultural and racial makeup of your region, and where possible, target those areas where children are not getting what they need. I think that you have all done a lot of research already, and they're starting to be able to have data to be telling you that. But if there are places and specific children that are not able to access services, or where you have kind of hot spots where you know that some of the biggest issues that need to be solved are happening, these are the perfect places to be looking for your parent representation. And then finally, I would suggest that as you start approaching this, that you think through what you're trying to achieve by having parents as equal partners in this work. So when I say that, I just want you to think about, I suspect you want to have parents who are going to be providing honest feedback that stretch your group and that have helped you have a clearer picture about the problems that you're trying to solve. And if you have done that and you've prioritized family engagement, at the conclusion of this process, you're going to have concrete examples of how parents influence the work and meaningful conversations where parents contributed and shed light on issues in a way that you had never thought of before. And you're going to feel really confident in the strategies that you have outlined in your plans. So I think that you're getting the gist of what I'm saying is finding the right parents takes some work, it takes some forethought, and you're really looking for parents who are willing to speak up, share their stories, and really lean into the work. And so selection is going to be really important for you. So I'm going to give you some more specific tips on how to be finding and thinking about which parents to be bringing to your table. So there are definitely lots of parents out there that are willing and eager to help. We have found that there are some key motivators, though, that drive parents and actually other people to choose when to participate in things like boards or clubs. These are really pretty universal motivation key factors. And the three that we have found specifically in parent engagement work that has been really helpful to the Michigan collaboratives and parent coalitions in pinpointing the parents who are going to be real change agents is really thinking about kind of these three different motivators. And the first one is social engagement. So a lot of parents, especially parents of young children, are looking for opportunities to socialize and build friendships and connections. And they are seeking out being involved in things to be able to fill that need. They really have that social desire, want to talk about adult things sometimes. Well, we also have family or parents who are really interested in personal and skill development. So, for example, when people are interested in improving their parenting skills or really getting better knowledge about accessing information and resources, tend to think of those parents as really driven by kind of that personal and skill development. The third motivation group is really people that are what I call purpose or mission driven. And these are the people that are interested in really making sure that change happens. They want to provide information about what's not working, that they want to really think about and work on, what families need to create a community that embraces and supports families with young children. And a lot of times I can identify parents that have this kind of what I call the fire inside by hearing things like, I'm struggling to find the services that I need to help my child, and I really wish that I could help make this easier for other parents. Or something like, I really want to change things so that other families don't go through what I did. And then I also have heard parents who are really saying things like, I'm involved in Head Start Policy Council or something like that. And I like how involved I can be there, but when I applied for child care subsidy, there are a lot of things that could be fixed. So you want the parents who are really thinking about big picture when you're talking about this. So for the work that you are wanting parents to support you with, I would suggest that you really be looking for parents that predominantly fall into this purpose and mission driven category. They are ready to go. They're ready to dig in and do the work that you're going to be asking them to do. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this and kind of the interplay of all of these things as well. But you really should be thinking about looking for parents who've had experiences, and especially some challenging ones that will be your allies for making change. Their motivation will be really high to be involved and to be supportive. All right, so I'm going to pause for a second and thinking, you may be thinking to yourself, I don't know a parent like this, or the stories that they have, or the only ones that I do know are already on other boards and we need new voices. So I ask you to think about for a second, and I know some of you are in little small groups. Think about within your community, the connections that you have in your hub areas. Who might be able to help you find the parents that you need so you're not just getting the same voices at the table? it takes a little digging to find the right fit. So I'm going to pause and let you, again, write some stuff in the chat box. Who might help you find these parents you need?
Hi, this is Sarah from the South Coast. I just also wanted to say that, one of the ways that I found a dad that is a parent leader for us is just at a local restaurant, actually. And so I think, we all go throughout our lives and are engaging with a variety of people, whether that's, a gas station attendant or a waiter or a busser or, and I mean, a CNA, any sort of person. And I think when we just meaningfully engage with people, that we can learn a lot about their lives and end up finding really strong advocates for our work.
Absolutely. Thank you. So Leslie also shared that if we want to get it right, it would be through the experiences of the users of any service. So really looking at parents who are currently using programs and services. Those are great people to be finding. Also I have a comment in here, nonprofits that might be working with parents that have children with special needs, other community partners, yes, culturally specific organizations who know their parents best and can support their engagement and leadership development, connecting with our partners to hear from their families, doing tabling to meet and engage families, use social media to get the parent voice and follow up with them. Fantastic. Any other thoughts? All right, great. I think one thing that I want to encourage you to think about is that this doesn't have to be all on you, that some of the best referrals are going to be from, trusted people within the communities that you're trying to reach. And so really kind of targeting who are the people that other people go to and really asking them and having an authentic conversation about what you're trying to achieve and who you're looking for. And a lot of times they are in kind of your home visitors as well, people who've heard the stories of the people that you're trying to engage. Will really be supportive of you in finding some great candidates. Fantastic. Okay, so let's move on. I'm going to now talk about how to start out right. It is going to be really important that you, just like with anything else, when you're trying to engage people, you want to put your best foot forward and start out on the best foot. So we're going to shift to talking about kind of what is needed to actually do the invitation and support parents as leaders and partners in creating system change. And this graphic was designed following an evaluation of Michigan's early childhood systems work. And it shows three key components that need to be nurtured in order to truly have parent partners and leaders. So in order to have these partners and leaders, we need empowered parent leaders. And we also need settings that support the parent voice and responsive partners to the work. So let me talk a little bit more about that very quickly. I want to highlight to you, too, that I know a lot of you are facilitators, and I think that our other colleague who's on the phone is going to be talking more with you, so it's great timing that she's going to be talking with you. But it's important for you to be paying attention to balancing your energy around supporting parents and feeling confident in contributing their voice with creating a culture that supports and includes parent voice. You can bring the best dynamo parents to the table, but it's not their job to create the environment in which their voice is going to be heard and used. So it's really the work of not only the facilitator, but the partners who are sitting at the table to have a culture that values that parent voice and actually uses it. So the parents will see that when I come to these meetings and I share my opinions, people are actually listening and digging more deeply and inquiring with me and doing something with the information that I'm providing, which is really important. So I know that all three of these things are really important for success, but today I'm really mainly going to focus on this section in the empowered parent leaders. And as I start going through these things, also want to mention that these tips that I'm going to talk about are really best practices for all of your members. I'm going to gear what I'm talking about to parents specifically, but really all of your members need support, and starting out right and providing support to keep them engaged is really critical to your success. And I think probably most of you know that, but just wanted to call that out. I suspect that the facilitation guide is going to be supporting you in some of those thoughts too. So in order to have parents participating and contributing actively in your work, you really need to empower them to do so. And once they feel empowered, that's what's going to keep them coming back. And it requires time and it requires resources. And so I'm going to talk about how to approach inviting them to participate, and then how to ensure that they understand their role, and talk about some specific things you can do to provide ongoing support, which is really important. As I mentioned, supporting parents to be successful takes time, and it also requires consistency. So it's important to make sure that there is clarity in your area about who is responsible for supporting the parent members. Someone has to take this role on and be the person that they trust. In addition, in your planning phases, you also really need to make sure that you have created processes and procedures about how you're going to remove barriers that might make it challenging for parents to participate. Not all of our parents are going to have the same barriers, so it's going to be important to think through which supports are universal and then which are based on the parent's need. And so, that can be socioeconomic, it can be how far they have to come, it can be all kinds of different things, but you really need to make sure that you address the barriers to participation, because that demonstrates to the parents that you value their time and are acknowledging the effort that it's going to take for them to participate and commit to this work. All right. I'm not sure if everyone knows what an elevator speech is. It's funny. I know a lot of people that do, but sometimes people say, what do you mean elevator speech? So an elevator speech is a speech that you can give in the amount of time that it takes to just go from, first floor to third floor. So keep it brief. Engagement starts at the beginning with your ask. And so being clear for yourself and with the parents about what you need from them and why you want them to be involved is really important when you get started. So this work, as we all know, can be kind of complex. I have heard a lot of people in Michigan who are talking to other people about doing system building work. The first thing that comes out of their mouth when someone says, what do you do? They say, well, it's complicated, which is true. Or they talk on and on and on, and people's eyes start rolling in the back of their head because they're not focusing on hitting the key points that would make people get engaged in the conversation. So in order to capture people's interest and really provide the information that they need to know, you want to hit it pretty quickly and invite them to engage in a conversation. So Cass and I are working together on a tip sheet and kind of a worksheet about this, but which will provide you with some more support and something concrete to be using. But before you start talking to your target parents, I would recommend that you be ready to talk about, in literally one sentence each, who you are in the organization that you represent, kind of your introduction, who in the world am I, what the stewardship committee or the hub is, how the hub does its work, and then why you're asking them to serve. So here's a place where you could use a specific example of something that has shown you that they are that purpose and mission-driven person. So just keep in mind, motivation determines what we choose to do. So when you invite parents to serve, you're going to want to specifically call out the motivation you think might drive them to be this dynamic member on your committee. And then the impact. You want to mention something about why parent voice is so critically important. Help them understand this is the value of ours, and we really want parent voice to be making a difference. It helps them feel like, okay, this is a value of theirs, and I can make an impact and understand what it is that my role is. And then, of course, call to action is ask them if they would consider talking more about participating. And I think that most of the time parents will certainly enter into dialogue. And this is the opportunity for you, too, to mention some of those other benefits of participation, which would be things like, of course, connection to other parents in the community or other community leaders, which gets at that social engagement, talk about opportunities to talk about things that matter about families and children. And then that the participation will support them in learning more about programs and services and policies that impact families in your community. So that gets at that other desire for that personal skill development. And so while you're really looking for people who are ready to serve in a mission-driven role, most parents, we find, are also looking for, when you're asking them, that what's in it for me, right? I think that everybody does this, but parents really are thinking about, because I hear a lot of people saying all the time, parents are too busy, they're too busy. They'll do what they're passionate about. And if their brain can easily see that there is a balance between the what I can contribute and the what do I get from this and what's it going to cost me, if you can balance all of that out, people tend to say yes, and they're excited about being a participant in your work. So because your elevator speech is going to be rockin' awesome and they're going to be excited to join you, you will have parents, of course, that agree to participate. And it is really important to be clear and supportive of parents from the beginning so that they know what to expect. So my underlying biggest thing is I see so many people not do this, but you really need to start by providing a comprehensive orientation that paints a clear picture of the work. You will want to talk about, what is this work? Maybe what's the history of the work? Tell them about the awesome success of the Student Success Act. Talk to them about state and local data about early childhood, and maybe give them resources that they can look at, because there are probably specific data that they might be interested in that impacts something that they're really passionate about and that they could contribute more to when they have more data to talk about. And then also share with them the structure of the group. Who's there? Like, where are they from? Like, who are all these other people that are going to be there? Because this isn't just a parent group. This is it's a committee of professional practice. It's also really important to be clear about your expectations, both what you expect from them and what they can expect from you. So a lot of groups that I have worked with have created agreements that define things like, how long is the term of service, and what is the time commitment going to be for me, and what deliverables are you expecting, and how you're going to compensate and support them. And again, we've got some, I mean, Cass and I have some examples of these that we can share with you. And they don't have to be like banging people over the head, but really making sure that you're clear on what you're asking and with them is going to really go a long way. I think that the parents sometimes don't ask the questions, and so you don't want to have miscommunication or misunderstandings that can lead to tension and stress. And I guess a little less formal than orientation, supporting new members and knowing the unwritten rules is also really, really important and something I hear from parents all the time. It goes a really long way if you can have a less formal conversation about what else is going on in the space at the meeting. So how people dress, when people arrive, maybe some of the dynamics of the group, like who's there, what are their roles, like any background about things that may have happened with this group, and maybe how the meeting is going to run. So if you've never been there, I know that I personally will ask, in different parts of Michigan, people dress differently for business meetings. I always ask ahead of time, or I think about, okay, if I'm going to a meeting with this group, maybe I dress down a little more, or, oh, this is I need a jacket type of meeting, or this group tends to run late, or it would be a really bad idea for me to show up late for this one. I really need to be there 10 minutes ahead of time. Give them those heads up so that they don't feel embarrassed and they don't have so much anxiety, and they feel confident when they walk into the meeting. And lastly, I would encourage you to consider doing your orientation, including all of your members of the stewardship committee. And then I would also highly recommend that you start off from the beginning connecting these parents to each other. Parents who sit on committees together become their own kind of group, just like other colleagues in the professional world have people that they go to and talk to all the time. The parents will become really their own support and professional group. So really connecting them to each other, but again, being clear and supportive through orientation and agreement and, really clear expectations, again, good for your entire group, but in particular, making sure that parents have this so that they feel confident is important. So I'm now going to get really specific about best practices and how to support parents in an ongoing manner. And I do want to just say, though, before I do that just like all committee members, parents will come with varied experiences and levels of confidence and experience from their past. And while these best practices are really, really important to pay attention, it's also important to not be rigid. And so as you work with parents and other members throughout the project, some are going to need more support and others will need less. And being available and flexible and demonstrate that you respect them as individuals is going to lead you to have a really close and deep trust with the parent. So if you're noticing they need less support, and maybe some parents emerge as, geez, I could be the lead of the other parents, that's awesome. And then some other parents, just like everybody, some just need a little bit more support to build their confidence so that they're participating. So all of these things I would really recommend that I'm going to talk about that you do on an ongoing basis, but of course be fluid with it based on their individual things that they bring to the table. We certainly don't want parents to ever feel like I need to handhold you, because that's very derogatory and something that parents don't need. What we're working towards is equal at the table. So, okay, anyway, moving on. So before meetings, schedule a regular time to review the agenda and the materials that are going to be covered ahead of the meeting to support them in feeling prepared. I would say initially you probably want an hour. You could do a virtual meeting. As you move forward, you probably only need 30 minutes, sometimes maybe 15. But it gives them the opportunity to ask questions of someone that they're comfortable asking them of. And so I tend to do a standing meeting for parent members who are in the work that I am doing. So I send out the agenda, and then typically a week ahead of the meeting so that people can pre-read and prepare. And then 2 days after that is usually my scheduled meeting so that they've had an opportunity to look at the agenda and the materials and then have questions for me. In addition, if you're going to have some key discussion items where parent voice is going to be important, help them get ready and organize their thoughts. And, also open the space for them to acknowledge feelings that might arise if they feel emotional about the topic. I have found that some parents, there's some triggers that happen about things that have happened to them. They've been mistreated, and they want to share their story, but they need a little bit of space to process it through. And not that crying or, getting teary or emotional in front of the larger group is a bad thing. I think that it is important for people to understand that this is emotional and hard for families. But helping families have some confidence and some place where they can kind of get their stuff out if they want to ahead of time so that they can proceed without too much emotion has really been beneficial in my experience. And then lastly with this, help them remember the importance of that they're representing more than just their specific individual experience. So help them think through questions that maybe are going to come up that you're going to be talking about what's on your agenda that they should ask other parents who are using that same program or service about. So, because sometimes there are differing opinions. I mean, that's not uncommon, that there are different opinions and experiences that can help have a much, much richer conversation and help them to be able to support you in understanding the problem in a better way. So, and during meetings. So again, for the person responsible for facilitating the meetings, really developing group norms or working agreements and following really good facilitation and group processes are so important. Well-run meetings that work hard to balance power and participation and then leave the people feeling like their time was well spent has people coming back. They're looking forward to doing more good work. And when you start out right by creating good working agreements, for the families in particular, think about specific norms that would help parents and other members feel safe and supported. So, some things like confidentiality, of course, but reminding people that, really listening to understand, not to reply, is a really helpful thing, and presuming positive intent. Some of those pretty classic working agreements, but helping people to come to those and then making sure that the group reinforces them. You also want to consider helping group members develop relationships through meaningful inclusion activities. So continually working to help the group cohese. And, consider having maybe some members that you pre-selected that could be maybe a mentor or a partner with the parents. So, for example, maybe it's their job to introduce the parent to the other members and explain who's sitting at their table. A lot of times these meetings have a lot of people in there and people move around to different tables. And so having someone who initiates and really is responsible for while you start making that a norm in the group, making sure that everyone knows who everyone else is, because it is really intimidating to be in a meeting when you really don't know who people are. And you don't want to be othering the parents. I have worked with some communities where they put all the parents at one table, at their own table, and I would really encourage you to not do that. In order to help the parents be a part and an equal partner in this, they need to be part of the group, not their own side group. Now, while they will support each other and have conversations with each other, certainly in shared experiences. Building those relationships by embedding them through their room and creating relationships between all of the members is really going to help you in your engagement processes. And then lastly, it's also helpful for the facilitator to have thought through when working on your agenda any of the discussion points that would benefit from the expertise of the parents and consciously turn to them for input. So like I was saying, it is best practice to send the agenda out, in advance. And when you're doing that, be really thinking about before, like I was saying, before you're meeting with the parents, think about what are the things that we're going to talk about where we need parent input for sure. Not that they can't talk all the time, but there are very specific things. And be ready for those and consciously be asking for their input. And, just as an aside, avoid acronyms and other insider speak. This is another thing that, of course, that we hear all the time. And I'm sure that all of you have been in meetings where people start speaking in acronyms and insider trading jargon, and it really makes you feel like I have no idea what you're talking about and your brain shuts off. So unless they're explained thoroughly, you need to pay attention to language and context and encourage other people to. And I have had groups where we have worked hard to encourage other people to pause the conversation. I tend to be scanning the room, of course, as a facilitator, looking at faces. And when I start to see the parents' faces glossing over, if it's appropriate, I will pause and ask the person speaking to give a little more context so that because sometimes not just the parents whose faces are glossing over because they're probably from a different part of the sector, to give context. Or I take notes on it, pause, and just say, so we're going to follow up on this because this is a complex thing that we're talking about here, and there's a lot of background that I need to give you in order to help you catch up with what we're talking about. Let's put that on our list of things to follow up on. And that usually helps people feel like, okay, I don't really have to worry and feel stressed. And finally, what to do after meetings. Follow up, follow up, follow up. This is really, really important to make this a priority. Other members of the committee do this naturally. So when they go back to work or they see each other at other meetings that they all go to, they're talking about what happened at the meeting, and they have the after meeting meeting. And parent members need to feel connection to the work and have a safe place to debrief the process. And so it's important to follow up on the concepts and conversations that took place to make sure that they get that background like I was just talking about. And also to check in and make it an open dialogue. How did it go? What went well? What could have gone better? What questions do you have? How can I support you? And then talk with them about next steps, because you do have expectations of them. So talk about assignments, about things that they should be doing between meetings. Are there other parents that they need to go and talk to and get more information? And really by doing these check-ins, again, I know it takes time and energy, but when they trust someone who is committed to helping them be successful and treating them like equal partners, they're also going to share intel and comments with you and, maybe behaviors that you need to be aware of to support their engagement and to mediate conflict that could arise. And so, if they trust you, they're going to share experiences that you should be aware of as their support person and then the facilitator of the group. So, really important to follow up. All right, so I've talked for a long time here, and just wanted to share with you, I recently was at a conference where Josh Sparrow from the Brazelton Center was speaking, and I really liked, and I kind of took liberty a little bit with what he said, but basically what he said is that When we welcome parents in as equal partners, we open ourselves up to learn about where our assumptions may have been wrong, and new ideas can blossom. And I love that. You should anticipate great things from what parents are going to bring to the table. And I'm excited to see and support all of you moving forward. So I will pause now and see if we have any questions. If that's okay. Does that work? Do we have time?
We have time.
All right. Excellent.
And there were a couple comments in the chat box. Thank you. So you can probably see those, Holly.
Yeah. Let's see here. Sorry, unfortunately, in GoToMeeting, you can't unhook the chat box, so it's a little down here. Someone is saying that the foundational steps I've outlined are critical, and that in prior Head Start experience, these elements and expectations were grounded in performance standards and funding allocations to support family voice on decision making. There were also clear pathways for empowered leaders to represent Head Start programs at state and national levels. Yes. The structure and resources to implement these foundational steps. What we are now doing or will be able to accomplish in the future would benefit from developing a similar pathway to amplified voice. Love that. Absolutely. Thank you for that comment. I agree. And then Leslie said, as part of a more intentionally mapped system of parent leadership from program to region to state to national. Maybe you could say, Leslie, could you say more about that? Oh, wait, maybe, no, that was part of the same thing, right? Sorry. Yes, so now I got it. Amplified voice as part of a more intentionally mapped system of parent leadership from program to regional to state to national. Absolutely. But now I get it. Now I got what you said, and very well said. It is amazing how I think Head Start has done such a beautiful job in their family engagement, and there's so many things that we can learn from it. I'm in awe of the amazing parent leaders that come out of, and you know, the ones who are going to Washington D.C. and advocating on behalf of all children and families, and they do such a great job. So, any questions on anything that I covered?
Quiet group today.
Yeah. And are you blown away? I guess my other question would be, and maybe Cass, Cass is really the support person, but I know, Cass, I don't know if you wanted to say anything. I think that sharing some best, we'd be, happy to share some best practices, some samples of different things that have been used elsewhere. Of some of these tools that you could use. And it seems like, orientation, don't recreate the wheel, work together on some of those things so that parents statewide are getting consistent information about the great work that all of you are doing.
Yes, thank you, Holly. One of the things on our last director call, our hub director call, this is how this webinar came to light, was we asked what might be helpful as a resource. And this was one of the things that folks thought might be beneficial, was to hear from you, Holly. And then also, our next phase of this webinar is a facilitator guide, which will also enhance some of the experiences that you're having as you form your stewardship committees, and parent engagement coordinators are working with families and parents to get them to the table and get them ready for those stewardship committees. So all of this kind of came in at a really good timing, and super excited about all the investments and the transformation around family voice and engagement that we're hopefully accomplishing. Again, Holly mentioned some resources, and I shared them on the webinar last week, just to reach out to me if you need them. I wasn't going to throw them at you unless you needed them. And also just just keep letting us know what might be helpful to you, because we'll be right there to do whatever we can in our abilities. Thank you.
Thanks, Cass. This is Denise. I also think for many of you are down the road with the family engagement work. I know I've seen some surveys that have gone out, et cetera. So keep reminding people, particularly hubs with on the base camp that you're all on, to be sharing with us and sharing with each other the resources as well. And we're happy if you have things. I know that we always like to do the Johnny Apple seeding of what's working in one hub can work well with another one. So the more we can share those, the better. So I think we're ready to transition over. Thank you so much, Holly, for this presentation.
Absolutely.
And we'll send that slide deck out to everyone in the follow-up with the recording as well. And now we're going to transition over to Julie Smith, who created the facilitator's guide, as well as some questions you can utilize to really get to linking your priority population data findings with speaking to parents in the priority populations. So with that, I'm going to make you the presenter, Julie, and we'll be ready to go. Just let me know. Let me just make sure it went over here.
Looks like it worked.
It worked. Perfect. All right. You can take it away.
So my screen is on there now? Is that right?
It should be. Let me look here. I have a Julie, but do I have the right Julie? That's the question. Let me look again. See how you show up on here.
Oh, I see. I think
So you do, there's a little box up at the top that says start sharing my screen, and when you press on that arrow, it will let you pull up whatever document you want that you have open. There you go. Is that you?
All right. Yep.
There we go. Woo.
Okay. All right. So I am going to try not to be redundant, but I feel very affirmed in everybody's leadership that they put some complimentary presenters on for you today. So I'm going to help you just walk through a very specific focus group and how you might facilitate it. So it kind of picks up after you've gathered everyone and you're coming into a shared space. You will need the facilitator guide for one part of this in just a few minutes. So I think that was sent to you all with your invitation to the webinar, because I'm going to want you to do some design so that you're ready to go right when you get off this webinar. So I'm going to pick up first with this belief that work moves at the speed of trust. And at Community Design Partners and Coaching for Improvement, we take a new approach to improvement where we really honor the need and the increased capacity for folks to look at data and disaggregate data and have a critical eye at data, and the importance of linking that data to research and finding solutions that are proven and grounded. But we're adding this third component now about the lived experience of those in our system. One of our core principles is that every system is perfectly designed to get the outcome it's getting. And so it's by design that some of our families and students are being marginalized by our systems. And their lived experience and their collection of those stories and experience will help us really get nuanced about the research and change that we need to make. So I just wanted to share that as grounding in where a lot of this facilitator's guide was built from, the belief system. Like Holly said, we too believe that the process of community coming together around a shared problem can be as important as any work or initiative that's going to end up getting getting elevated. And we know that you all are sitting in a seat of expert around the solutions and around the content. That's why you're empowered in the roles that you are. But for these focus groups, we really want you to open yourself up to be affirmed or challenge your understanding by the lived experience of those in your system. So we created this facilitator guide to move you into facilitator so that once you can put your expert hat back on, you have a lot behind you. So you guys may have seen this video of, so now we're going to go straight through the facilitator guide, and we're going to talk about it, have some discussion about it, and then some question and answer. So this is a teacher who greets his student every day. It's just a screenshot. It was a viral video, but that is how you will start a focus group. It is going to, the strength of your focus group and the information you get is going to be on the participants' comfort, just like Holly said. And there are ideas and specific skills for that in the facilitator guide. Remember to have fun. This is the main human relationship builder right there, is people who can laugh together, become relaxed together, and are opened up to hearing each other. So we put in the facilitator guide some prompts for an introduction that is more than just your name and maybe the kids that you have, some traditional ones. You need to pick something that is not forced for your personality, but if it can be something that generates some smiles and some comfort, that is your first opportunity for relationship building. If you're in the facilitator's guide right now, you'll see that the bullets say something that makes you proud of this community or something you like about living in this community. You might find that those are redundant when we get further into our facilitator's guide. And these other two, something that recently made you smile or your secret superpower, you might feel awkward asking those two. They're just suggestions. And so it does really need to be something that shares who you are as well. Holly talked a lot about agreements. I loved how she talked about agreements for the whole process and bringing them back together multiple times. And then she also talked about norming right there in the engagement session. I fully agree with both of those. We gave you some suggestions for agreements you might use during a focus group. And I would say that holding the team to these agreements might be your biggest and hardest job. And as silly as it may seem, it might be something that you want to practice with your colleagues because it's really hard to disrupt somebody who is holding all of the time by sharing their stories. You are going to have extroverts in the room. You're going to have introverts in the room. You're going to have splainers in the room. You're going to have people that speak multiple languages in the room. And how can you hold space for equity of voice in that room? These agreements are your backstop. And it is really great to keep coming back to them and reminding people as you're monitoring airtime for everyone. If you start with strength, people will have a hard time moving into too crabby during the focus group. There are strengths everywhere in a community. And even if some of our parents have experienced trauma in our system, they have a place of strength in the community that they can anchor in for the day. Find that place. It doesn't have to be directly related to the topic at hand, it can be more broad than strength with the system. But hearing each other anchor in strengths and assets of the community will give us a foundation to build from. Okay, now for the focus group planning. Please look at the facilitator guide, and I'm going to actually ask you to unmute during this because I honestly don't know how to get back to the comment box. But we're going to do a little bit of designing so that you can make this focus group your own, but have some scaffolding of support. So if you look in the facilitator's guide and get to the section that's called focus or discussion groups, and it's about 40 minutes long in this part, you're going to see some questions for parents and for providers that were co-designed with leadership from the department. And then right below that, you're going to see some different ways or strategies to gather the information from these questions. And so I'm going to see how this goes and really encourage participation. Here is a strategy that we have listed in the guide. The strategy is simply to ask the question directly and ask for responses from anyone and get as many people to contribute as possible. Your role would be to ask probes, not to confirm or disagree with answers, but to probe, to ask if other people have opinions, or to tell me more, or can you give me an example if something is really not clear. If you do this strategy for every question, you may run out of time, and you're more likely to have some voices dominate the space or take up most of the time. So, however, this is also a strategy for some of the deeper, more complex questions. So if we look at the questions, let's just say for parents, the 3 that are there, and we think about this strategy, can anyone just align which question would this strategy work for?
And if anybody does want to be in the chat box, this is Denise. I can monitor that and read out those as well, Julie.
Oh, Denise, that's so great. And I do want to let everybody on the phone know that I was a elementary school teacher for 15 years, so my wait time is killer. I am concerned, though, that we don't have access to the facilitator guide. So if nobody is going to share and to help you move along with your Friday. Oh, is someone there?
Got one. We have somebody put in there, number 2.
Yes, so number 2, what are your child care or preschool needs? Great. And I'm going to tell you this right now, there is no right or wrong answer. It's just a way for you guys to start thinking about what you anticipate people saying so that you can align a strategy ahead of time to keep things moving. I'm sure many of you were educators in the past too. This is also an engagement strategy, or what we might call lesson design, where we don't do the same thing over and over again, but we can provide different ways of engagement for different personality types, styles, movement, energy builders. So that's kind of why we're doing this too. There's not a right or wrong answer. Okay, the next strategy that we suggested were to have people write first. And then you can consider if you want to collect their responses, or if they're just there to help the participants brainstorm, remember their thoughts on the question, and it will really pull out some of those people who are less verbal than others. So which is a question that you might see from the list that you might want people to really think of their experience and have some think time first?
In the chat box, we've got number 3.
That's what I did when I anticipated what they would work for. And number 3 says, what is getting in the way of meeting those needs? It's a follow-up question to that number 2. What are your childcare or preschool needs? This question, what are getting in the way of those needs, is just a reminder. The families that we're engaging, or the community members that we're engaging, or even when we engage providers, they're part of the system. And this investment is really to transform systems. And so sometimes when we just ask them for an answer or don't give them time to collect their thoughts, they only know how to answer within the system they've experienced. And so if we want them to give us answers that will help us do things differently or transform the system, we really need to probe deeply to the stories of where they thrive and where maybe they've been harmed. And so having this think time and potentially offering to just collect the written responses might let a little bit more vulnerability come through for those transformational answers that we're hoping for. And finally, a visual continuum. And this is a great one to get a lot of data quickly. And you can have this set up as participants are even coming into the room, and then you can have a conversation about the visual data source with the participants. So it really is a continuum of answers of strongly agree or strongly disagree. If you want, for example, to not let a conversation go anywhere for some reason, you could list possibilities and have them pick their favorites or the ones that they agree with the most. But it's kind of like that poll anywhere opportunity on a chart paper. Does anybody see a question that we could design from the list, that we could design how it would look for like a survey on a continuum like this? This is definitely a tougher one. And another good strategy for this one is, if you are exploring a question like, what are your childcare or preschool needs, and you're collecting all these responses, you could put the responses, somebody's most likely charting and taking notes of those responses. And then a great strategy is to have participants prioritize by giving them a dot to put it on their priority. Because sometimes in focus groups, we'll keep generating. And then when we go back to design, we might pick one that aligns to our assumptions or our bias, but it might not be the one that is the highest need of the community. So when we put this strategy out there, we were really thinking about it also being used as a way to confirm or get information around priorities. I just have a couple more slides here for you. And I just want to really honor the tensions of time. you're going to have a set amount of time for your focus group. So I would encourage you to prioritize the questions that you want to make sure you get to. Different strategies take different amount of time. So really think about, if we're doing that first strategy of opening it up for everyone and encouraging everyone to participate, you will want to give a protocol. So you might say, I'm going to let everybody have 1 minute to answer this question, so that you don't ask one question and everybody just starts talking and engaging in a conversation and you don't get to any of your other questions. So wherever you can put in protocols for timekeeping, the better. And when you know which strategy you're going to use for which question, those decisions will become much easier. And that's what we mean by anticipate where things are going to go. And Holly did a beautiful job of talking about the planning process. These are just a little bit more nuanced things to consider in that. And then for us, when we talk about wrapping up, there is always this somebody out there who gets home and was like, oh, I wish I would have thought about this. And a lot of people take longer to process the experience that they just had. So it's really wonderful to offer them a way to share information or ideas or stories that came up when they stepped away, or maybe that for whatever reason they didn't feel they could share in the room. And going back to that tension of time, this will be the thing that drops off, is sharing this information. So if you can have it, contact information posted in the room or a flyer for them to take as they leave, you'll have that. That won't take any time at all. When we then start to analyze and collect and evaluate the data from focus groups, we like to use a very simple process called headlining, and it is described in more detail in your facilitator's guide. But headlining is really a way for you to help you keep your bias out of what you heard. And that is really, you get together with a team, a small team, and you cluster the quotes from participants that you heard. And whoever is taking notes should really try to stick to writing down quotes that participants said, so that your inferences and bias don't interpret what they were saying. And so as you take notes, and then as you read them out, somebody can read the quotes that were said, and other people start organizing them. We do love sticky notes, and then you can cluster like quotes, like themes, and write descriptive headlines over that theme and what you heard. And the headlines should be descriptive enough that when you're then communicating it out to people who weren't in the room, that they can understand what was raised. And it's also good as part of your routines that you're building with participants, that you confirm that these headlines are what other people who were in the room heard as well. I gave some headline examples here, and you have access to this webinar. So I think that these will become more relevant as you're starting to write headlines and can see examples of how they are descriptive in nature. Any questions for me on the facilitator's guide? I would anticipate that questions will come up as you're designing your session, and I'm more than happy to engage with people at that time. Leaders on the call have my contact information, but I'm happy to answer whatever has come up for you now.
Thanks, Julie. This is Denise. Knowing that people can get in touch after is awesome, and folks can come through myself or Sue or Cass, or you also have Julie's contact, like she said, as well. Does anybody have any questions? I'm monitoring the chat box. I don't see anything yet. All right. Maybe folks are processing, and when we send all this information out to everyone, you're also welcome to raise questions then, and we can get those answered, add them to the FAQ, and send them out to Julie as well.
Absolutely.
I love I just want to say, this is Denise, the piece about using sticky notes and dots. Again, knowing, having done a lot of facilitation, you do have folks who are unlike me and are introverted, and giving them opportunities to be able to participate without actually having to do a whole lot of talking, I think, at the table is really awesome. So I really liked those tips and ideas, Julie.
Yeah, it works well. And it helps you stick on schedule. And just another thing about that is, if you're looking at time and you're like, just move to writing on sticky notes and letting them share that out. It will keep a conversation to a time frame. So it should be in your back pocket for any strategy to have.
Perfect. Yep. All right. Well, we're not getting, we'll give the last call to people. If we have any final questions, don't be shy, jump on now, or you can go ahead and send those in the chat box or send them after you've thought about this or started your design process. Looks like we're good.
Okay. Awesome.
All right. Well, Julie, thank you so much. We really appreciate this resource for everyone, and thank you to Holly as well for giving us such great information. We're going to send the recording of this meeting out. It takes a while for it to convert over to the MP3, so we'll get that out to you by early next week at the latest. And then, Julie, if you haven't done so yet, if you can share your final slides with me, I'll send those out with Holly's slides as well. Actually, all this will come from Cass to you on Monday. So I think that's all we need. And we thank you so much, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Bye.
Bye. Pause recording.